"Ma'am, this coffee shop is not for people like you." Sergeant Travis Mercer said it loudly enough for every customer to hear, then pointed toward the glass door as if Naomi Carter had already been judged. The room went still. A milk steamer hissed behind the counter. A paper cup rolled slowly across the tile and stopped beside Naomi's polished black shoe. She looked at Mercer's badge, then at the dark body camera clipped beneath it. The tiny indicator light was off. "Am I being detained?" she asked. Mercer's mouth tightened. He had expected fear, embarrassment, maybe an apology. Instead, the black woman seated near the front window spoke with the measured calm of someone who understood exactly where his authority ended. That unsettled him. "You're being told to leave," he replied. "That should be enough." Naomi glanced through the window. Across the street, a man in a gray baseball cap stood beneath the striped awning of a closed bookstore. Marcus Hill had arrived. He was 17 minutes early, and the brown envelope under his arm contained evidence that could expose years of misconduct inside Mercer's department. One wrong move from Naomi could send him walking away forever. She could have reached inside her coat and ended the confrontation with a single flash of her federal credentials. She did not. Protecting Marcus mattered more than protecting her pride. "I paid for my coffee," Naomi said. Her voice remained low. "I haven't disturbed anyone." Mercer turned toward Linda Harper, the shop's owner. "Did you ask her to leave?" Linda's hand paused over the register. She was a small woman with silver hair and tired eyes, and she had spent 12 years serving officers from the precinct across the street. Their drinks were usually free. Their complaints were never questioned. "No," Linda admitted. Mercer looked back at Naomi. "Well, I'm asking now." A few customers lowered their eyes. One man lifted his phone, pretended to read a message, then quietly angled the camera toward the front table. Behind the espresso machine, 19-year-old Miguel Alvarez stopped wiping the counter. Naomi noticed everything: the mirrored security dome near the ceiling, the reflection of Mercer's partner waiting outside, the nervous movement of Linda's fingers, and the faint bulge of the sealed transmitter inside her own coat pocket. Every word in the room was already being preserved. Mercer stepped closer. The scent of wintergreen gum mixed with roasted coffee. "Identification," he said. Naomi held his gaze. "For what suspected offense?" That question changed the air. Mercer's expression hardened, not because she had broken a law, but because she had refused the role he had assigned her. In his mind, she was supposed to become smaller. She was supposed to leave quietly. Instead, she made him explain himself. He looked down at the brown envelope beside her cup. A corner of an old photograph showed through the torn paper, a young black man on a sidewalk, surrounded by uniforms. Mercer recognized the scene. For one brief second, confidence left his face. Naomi saw it. He was not merely irritated by her presence. He was afraid of what she might know. His hand moved toward the envelope. Naomi placed 2 fingers over it. "That doesn't belong to you." Mercer glanced at his silent body camera, then leaned close enough that only the nearest tables could hear him. "People like you always think you know your rights." Naomi's pulse struck once, hard, beneath her collar. Outside, Marcus took one step backward. She had seconds to keep him from disappearing. Still, she did not reveal her badge. She looked directly at the dark lens on Mercer's chest and said, "Officer, you may want to turn your camera back on." Mercer smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You don't give orders here." Naomi's eyes shifted to the ceiling camera above him. "No," she said softly. "But the truth is already watching." 8 hours earlier, Naomi Carter had stood beneath the pale lights of a federal conference room while rain traced thin lines down the windows. On the table before her lay 17 complaint files, each marked with the same precinct number. Unlawful stops. Missing footage. Reports rewritten after witnesses went home. The names changed, but the pattern did not. Most of the people in those folders were black, working class, and easy for the system to ignore. Daniel Kim, her supervisor, placed one final photograph beside the files. It showed Marcus Hill in his old police uniform, younger then, standing at the edge of a department ceremony. "He says he kept copies," Daniel said. Videos, internal messages, altered reports. Enough to open a civil rights investigation if they are real. Naomi studied Marcus's face. He had served 22 years before resigning without explanation. For 6 months, he had refused every official request for an interview. Then, late the previous night, he had called from a disposable telephone and named Harper's Coffee as the meeting place. Public. Busy. Cameras at every entrance. He trusts no one with a badge, Daniel warned. Naomi understood that better than she said. Her father, Samuel Carter, had driven a city bus for 31 years. He wore pressed shirts, polished his shoes every Sunday, and treated strangers with a patience Naomi had spent her life trying to match. None of that had protected him the night 2 officers stopped him beside a grocery store and decided his new sedan could not belong to him. Naomi had been 14, watching from the passenger seat as her father answered every question with quiet dignity. He never raised his voice. He never gave them the anger they seemed to expect. Later, when she asked why he had remained so calm, he told her, "Some people get loud when the truth comes close. Do not let their noise decide who you become." That sentence followed her into law school, through federal training, and into every room where power mistook restraint for weakness. By 9:15 that morning, Naomi was seated near the front window of Harper's Coffee, 12 miles from the federal office. She wore a charcoal coat, dark slacks, and no visible weapon. Her credentials rested inside a leather wallet beneath her left arm. A sealed transmitter was clipped inside her pocket, sending sound to Daniel's team parked 3 blocks away. The shop smelled of cinnamon, roasted beans, and wet wool. Linda Harper worked the register while Miguel Alvarez arranged pastries behind the glass case. Customers came and went beneath the soft brass bell above the door. Naomi chose the window table because Marcus had requested a clear line of sight from across the street. At 9:23, she noticed him beneath the striped awning of a closed bookstore. Gray baseball cap. Brown envelope. Shoulders held too tightly for a man pretending to wait for the rain. Naomi lifted her coffee but did not wave. Marcus looked toward the precinct, then back at her. He was deciding whether to cross. The bell above the door rang again. Conversation softened before Naomi even turned. Sergeant Travis Mercer entered with the confidence of someone who had never needed permission. Linda reached automatically for a large black coffee. Miguel lowered his eyes. A customer quietly moved his coat from the table nearest the door. Mercer accepted the cup without reaching for his wallet. Then he noticed Naomi sitting in the place everyone else had learned to leave open. His gaze moved from her face to the brown envelope beside her hand. Across the street, Marcus stopped walking. Naomi saw fear enter his posture. She also saw Mercer begin to smile. In that instant, she knew the meeting had changed, and one careless display of her badge could destroy the only chance they had to uncover the truth. Travis Mercer did not need to raise his voice to change the room. The room had already learned to change for him. Conversation softened when he entered. Chairs shifted. Eyes dropped toward cups and newspapers. Linda Harper placed his coffee on the counter before he asked, a large dark roast with 1 packet of sugar, exactly the way he took it every morning. She did not mention the unpaid tab hidden beneath the register, and Travis did not reach for his wallet. He simply lifted the cup, gave her a brief nod, and turned as though the gesture confirmed an arrangement everyone understood. Across the shop, Naomi watched the ritual without moving. The photograph of Travis Mercer hanging inside the precinct lobby showed a different version of the same man, clean uniform, practiced smile, one hand resting on the shoulder of a rescued child. Local newspapers had called him dependable, fearless, and devoted to public safety. His name appeared at charity breakfasts and city council meetings. Business owners shook his hand. Officials praised his service. Yet inside Harper's Coffee, respect did not look like admiration. It looked like Linda checking his expression before speaking. It looked like Miguel becoming careful with every sound he made. It looked like customers leaving one particular table empty, even during the morning rush, because Travis preferred sitting near the front window. Naomi was sitting there now. Mercer noticed that before he noticed anything else. His eyes rested on her coat, her untouched coffee, and the brown envelope beside her hand. Then they moved to the empty chair across from her. He did not see a customer waiting for someone. He saw a stranger occupying space he considered his. Busy morning, he asked Linda, though his attention remained fixed on Naomi. About the usual, Linda replied. Her voice was pleasant, but her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. Travis took a slow drink. You know her. Linda looked toward Naomi. She bought coffee about 10 minutes ago. That was not what I asked. The words were quiet. Linda swallowed. No. I do not know her. Outside, rainwater slid along the window in silver lines. Marcus Hill remained beneath the bookstore awning across the street, the envelope under his arm held close to his chest. Naomi could feel his hesitation even through the glass. One sign that she had been identified as federal law enforcement, and he would disappear. Travis crossed the shop with measured steps. The polished floor reflected the dark line of his uniform. He stopped beside Naomi's table, close enough to block her view of the door. This table is usually kept open, he said. Naomi looked at the empty tables behind him. There was no reserve sign. Mercer glanced toward Linda, expecting support. She lowered her eyes. That small failure irritated him more than Naomi's answer. What is in the envelope? He asked. Private documents. Private for who? That is also private. A faint smile appeared at one corner of his mouth. It was not amusement. It was the expression of a man who believed resistance was merely the beginning of surrender. You are not from around here, he said. Naomi heard the statement beneath the statement. She also noticed his body camera. The indicator light was dark, but there was a clean thumbprint near the power control. It had not failed. Someone had switched it off. Does that matter? She asked. Mercer's gaze hardened. He looked at the envelope again, then at Naomi's face, building a story from nothing but suspicion and certainty. It might, he said. Across the street, Marcus took one step backward. Naomi kept both hands visible on the table. She could reveal her badge. She could end the questions. Instead, she watched Mercer watching her, and understood that his confidence did not come from the law. It came from years of believing no one would ever make him explain himself. Naomi kept her hands resting beside the cup, calm enough to make Mercer feel as though he were the one being examined. Am I being detained? She asked. The question landed softly, but it stripped away the performance. Mercer had expected obedience. Instead, he was being asked to name the law. I am asking questions, he said. That is not the same thing. Then I am free to leave. Naomi reached for the envelope. Mercer placed his palm over it before she could lift it. The motion was quick, casual, almost practiced. Not until I know what this is. Do you have a warrant? His jaw tightened. Around them, the shop seemed to shrink. The refrigerator motor hummed beneath the counter. Rain tapped the window in a steady rhythm. Miguel stood motionless with a towel in his hand. Linda stared at the register, pretending not to listen. Outside, Marcus Hill remained under the awning, watching every second through the wet glass. Naomi knew he was measuring her now. Not her courage. Her judgment. If she showed her credentials, Mercer might call the precinct, and within minutes the meeting would be compromised. Marcus had spent years believing the department could reach anyone who tried to expose it. One glimpse of federal involvement could send him back into hiding. Naomi released the envelope and looked at Mercer's hand. Those are private materials, she said. You do not have permission to inspect them. Mercer leaned closer. People who have nothing to hide usually cooperate. Naomi felt the old anger rise, familiar and hot, but she kept it behind her teeth. She had heard that sentence in interrogation rooms, traffic stops, courthouse hallways, and once, years ago, from an officer standing beside her father's car. It was not an argument. It was a trap. Rights are not evidence of guilt, she said. Mercer gave a short laugh. You sound rehearsed. You sound certain without facts. For the first time, his expression changed. Not much. Just enough. His eyes dropped to the envelope again. A corner had loosened where his palm pressed against it, revealing part of an old photograph. Naomi saw the moment he recognized it. The image showed a young black man seated on a curb while several officers stood nearby. One uniform bore the same precinct patch as Mercer's. His fingers stopped moving. Naomi noticed. So did Linda. Mercer pulled the envelope closer. Where did you get this? The question came too fast. Too personal. Naomi did not answer. Across the street, Marcus shifted backward, almost disappearing behind the bookstore column. Mercer looked toward the window and followed Naomi's line of sight. That was the danger. She needed to keep his attention inside the room. Officer, she said, remove your hand. His eyes returned to her. You do not tell me what to do. Naomi glanced at the body camera on his chest. The dark lens reflected a tiny version of her face. Then turn it on, she said. Mercer's thumb moved near the control, but instead of activating it, he pressed the device flat against his uniform as though making sure it stayed silent. Naomi heard the faint click. The transmitter inside her coat was still live. Daniel Kim's team would hear everything, but Mercer did not know that. He believed the darkness on his chest belonged to him. Naomi looked at the photograph beneath his hand and understood something that changed the entire meeting. Mercer was not merely suspicious of a stranger. He knew the case. He knew the young man in the photograph. And whatever was inside the envelope frightened him enough to forget that witnesses were watching. Mercer lifted the envelope from the table. Before Naomi could stop him. The torn edge opened just enough for several photographs to slide across the wood. One showed the same young man on the curb. Another showed a patrol car parked behind an abandoned warehouse after midnight. A third captured two officers carrying boxes toward an unmarked storage room behind the precinct. Mercer's face lost its color for less than a second, but Naomi saw it. These are stolen police materials, he said. No, Naomi replied. They are copies. That answer made him look toward the window again. Marcus was gone from beneath the awning. Only rain remained, darkening the sidewalk where he had stood. Naomi felt the meeting slipping away, but she kept her expression steady. Mercer gathered the photographs too quickly, bending one at the corner. Stand up. On what legal basis? Possible possession of confidential evidence. You have not established that. His voice rose enough to bring every eye in the shop back to them. Stand up now. Naomi slowly pushed her chair away from the table. She kept her hands visible, not because Mercer deserved her cooperation, but because every customer in the room had become a witness. He reached for her wrist and turned her toward the door. The metal restraint closed with a hard click. It was tighter than necessary. Naomi drew one controlled breath. She did not resist. She reached toward my equipment, Mercer announced to the room. The lie came so smoothly that several people looked down, as though hearing it made them responsible for deciding whether to challenge it. Miguel did not look away. His telephone was hidden beneath the counter, the camera aimed through a gap between stacked paper cups. Linda's gaze moved from Naomi to the security monitor mounted beside the kitchen door. The red recording symbol was still visible. Outside, a patrol car pulled to the curb. Officer Emily Rhodes stepped out, young, pale, and alert. She entered the shop with one hand near her radio. What happened? She asked. Suspicious documents, refusal to identify, possible interference, Mercer said. She made a movement toward my sidearm. Emily looked at Naomi's restrained hands, then at the distance. Between the table and Mercer's belt. Something in her expression shifted. Was your camera running? Mercer did not answer immediately. Naomi turned her head just enough to see Emily notice the dark indicator light. It malfunctioned, Mercer said. Mine is on, Emily replied. The room became quieter. Mercer looked at her with a warning hidden inside his stare. Then document the arrest. Naomi spoke before Emily could respond. Officer Rhodes, please note the envelope was removed without consent. Mercer tightened his grip on the documents. You do not dictate the report. No, Naomi said. But I can hear when one is being written before the facts. He escorted her toward the door, passing the table where her coffee still steamed beneath the cold window light. As they crossed the threshold, Mercer used his shoulder radio. One female in custody. Possible federal material. The word federal escaped before he could pull it back. Naomi heard Emily inhale behind him. So did Linda. Mercer realized what he had said and changed direction. I mean official material. Possibly stolen. But the correction came too late. At the patrol car, he placed Naomi in the back seat and shut the door. Rain blurred the coffee shop into streaks of amber and gray. Through the glass, Naomi saw Linda remove the security drive from beneath the counter and slip it into a white pastry box. Miguel sent the recording from his telephone to an unknown contact. Emily stood beneath the awning, staring at Mercer's silent body camera as though seeing him clearly for the first time. Then Mercer turned toward the shop and said, "Get me every camera file before anyone else touches it." Naomi leaned back against the seat, the transmitter still hidden beneath her coat, and understood his next move. He was not taking her to the station to investigate a crime. He was taking her there to control the evidence. The patrol car entered the precinct garage beneath a ceiling of cold fluorescent lights. Naomi watched the concrete walls pass through the rain-streaked window while Mercer spoke quietly into his telephone. He asked someone named Harlan to secure the coffee shop footage before the owner could make a copy. He believed his voice was too low for her to hear. The transmitter beneath Naomi's coat heard every word. Inside the station, Mercer guided her past the public desk and into a narrow holding room with a metal table, 2 chairs, and no windows. He removed the restraints, placed her leather wallet and telephone inside a clear property bag, then carried the brown envelope away without documenting its contents. Naomi said nothing. The red marks around her wrists would fade. Missing evidence would not. A ceiling vent pushed dry air across the room. Somewhere beyond the wall, a printer clicked, a door closed, and officers laughed at something she could not hear. Naomi sat beneath the white light and studied the small camera above the doorway. Its indicator was on. Mercer had forgotten that silence inside a police station was rarely private. 10 minutes later, Officer Emily Rhodes entered with a paper cup of water. She set it on the table and remained standing. "Sergeant Mercer says you refused identification," she said. "He never established a lawful reason to demand it," Naomi replied. Emily looked toward the camera, then lowered her voice. "His body camera did not malfunction." Naomi waited. "I saw him turn it off before he approached you." The admission seemed to frighten Emily as soon as it left her mouth. Naomi did not press her. "Write exactly what you observed," she said. "Do not add anything. Do not remove anything." Emily nodded once and left. Across town, Linda Harper locked the coffee shop office while 2 uniformed officers waited near the counter. She had already removed the original security drive and hidden it inside a white pastry box. The box now rested on the passenger seat of her daughter's car, traveling toward the office of a civil rights attorney Linda had known since college. When the officers requested access to the recording system, Linda gave them the backup unit that stored only the previous week. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. Miguel had also preserved his telephone video. He sent 1 copy to his mother, 1 to a cloud account, and 1 to a local reporter with instructions not to publish unless he contacted her again. 4. The first time that morning, the truth existed in more places than Mercer could control. Back at the precinct, a desk officer opened Naomi's property bag to complete the intake record. He unfolded the leather wallet and stopped. The gold seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation caught the overhead light. Mercer crossed the room, took the wallet, and stared at Naomi's photograph beside the word Special Agent. The color drained from his face. He entered the holding room alone and closed the door. "Why did you not identify yourself?" he asked. Naomi looked at the dark body camera on his chest. "You never gave me a lawful reason to." Mercer placed the wallet on the table as though it had become dangerous. "This can be handled quietly." Naomi leaned back. "It already was quiet. That is why you thought you could control it." He stepped toward the camera and reached for the wall switch. Before his hand touched it, the station's front doors opened. Voices moved through the hallway, firm and coordinated. Daniel Kim entered with 4 federal agents and a signed order preserving every report, recording, message, and storage device connected to the arrest. Mercer stood motionless. Naomi looked at him through the pale light and spoke only 6 words. "Preserve Harper's cameras. All of them." Daniel nodded. Then another agent placed a sealed evidence box on the table. Written across the label was Marcus Hill's name. Daniel Kim placed the preservation order on the metal table and turned toward Mercer. "No one in this building deletes, moves, or edits anything," he said. "That includes body camera records, dispatch logs, property reports, internal messages, and surveillance footage." Mercer tried to recover his posture. "This is a local arrest. Your agent refused to identify herself and interfered with an active inquiry." Naomi remained seated. The pale marks around her wrists rested beneath the fluorescent light, quiet evidence of how quickly certainty had replaced procedure. Daniel looked at the property bag, the undocumented envelope, and the body camera that was still dark. "Then your record should support every word you just said." Mercer opened his mouth, but the hallway behind him filled with footsteps. 2 federal evidence technicians entered carrying sealed containers. Another agent photographed the room before touching anything. What had felt like Mercer's territory minutes earlier now seemed smaller, reduced to walls, paperwork, and questions he could no longer control. Daniel opened the box labeled with Marcus Hill's name. Inside were 3 encrypted drives, printed email chains, and copies of incident reports marked with handwritten corrections. Marcus had not abandoned the meeting. When he saw Naomi taken from the coffee shop, he followed the emergency instructions Daniel's team had given him and delivered the evidence to a secure federal office. Naomi felt the tension in her shoulders ease, but only slightly. The mission had survived. The truth still had a path forward. Mercer stared at the drives. "You do not know what those contain." "You do," Naomi said. He looked at her, and the fear she had seen in the coffee shop returned. Daniel removed a folder from the box. The first page listed 17 civilian complaints involving unlawful stops, altered statements, and missing recordings. 12 body camera files had disappeared after being uploaded to the department server. 5 witnesses had withdrawn statements after private visits from officers. Each case had been reviewed and closed by the same command office. At the bottom of every approval page was the signature of Deputy Chief Raymond Harlan. Mercer glanced toward the door. Naomi remembered the telephone call from the patrol car. "Secure the footage. Ask Harlan." The name had sounded ordinary then. Now it connected the coffee shop to something much larger. Officer Emily Rhodes appeared in the hallway holding a written statement. Her face was pale, but she walked directly to Daniel. "I observed Sergeant Mercer deactivate his camera before approaching Miss Carter," she said. "I also heard him describe an action that I did not witness." Mercer's expression hardened. "Officer Rhodes, think carefully about what you are saying." Emily looked at him for a long moment. "I finally am." She signed the statement. The scratch of her pen seemed louder than the voices. Outside. Daniel handed the document to an agent, then asked for Mercer's department telephone. Mercer refused. A federal attorney stepped forward and read the relevant language from the preservation order. Slowly, Mercer placed the telephone on the table. A new message illuminated the screen before the evidence technician sealed it. It came from Deputy Chief Harlan. The preview contained only one sentence. "Destroy the Harper Drive before federal agents arrive." No one spoke. Mercer stared at the message as though silence might erase it. Naomi stood and retrieved her credentials from the property bag. She did not display them with triumph. She simply returned them to the inside pocket of her coat. "This was never about who I was," she said. "It was about what you believed you could do to someone you thought had no power." Daniel ordered Mercer relieved of duty pending investigation. As another supervisor approached, the station doors opened again. Deputy Chief Raymond Harlan entered, demanding to know why federal agents had taken control of his precinct. Then he saw his own message glowing inside the clear evidence bag. Deputy Chief Raymond Harlan stopped 3 feet inside the room. His eyes moved from Daniel Kim to the sealed evidence bag, then to the message glowing through the plastic. For the first time, the men who had spent years controlling reports, witnesses, and careers had no private hallway left to escape through. "That message is being taken out of context," Harlan said. Daniel did not raise his voice. "Then the full context will help you." Federal agents collected his telephone, office computer, access card, and every device connected to the department evidence system. Mercer stood nearby without his badge, watching the structure that had protected him become a chain of records pointing in both directions. The investigation lasted 7 months. Linda Harper's original security drive showed Mercer confronting Naomi without lawful cause, taking the envelope, and making statements that did not match what happened. Miguel Alvarez's recording captured the same encounter from another angle. Emily Rhodes's body camera confirmed Naomi kept her hands visible and followed every instruction. The transmitter inside Naomi's coat preserved Mercer's call asking Harlan to secure the coffee shop footage before anyone else could reach it. The department server revealed something larger. Files had not simply disappeared. They had been renamed, moved, and overwritten through administrator accounts assigned to Harlan's office. 17 complaints became 26. Then 34. Families who had been told there was no evidence learned that evidence had existed all along. Some cases were dismissed. Others were reopened. Several people received new hearings. The city could no longer describe the problem as one officer making one mistake. By the time Naomi entered the federal courthouse, the marble steps were crowded with reporters, former officers, local residents, and families carrying photographs of people whose complaints had been ignored. She walked past them without celebration. Her father sat in the second row of the courtroom, wearing the same calm expression she remembered from the night beside the grocery store. Mercer took the witness stand near the end of the civil trial. His uniform was gone. Without it, he looked smaller, but Naomi felt no satisfaction in that. The purpose was not humiliation. It was truth. Under questioning, Mercer admitted he had turned off his camera before approaching her. He admitted he had no report of a crime inside the coffee shop. He admitted Harlan had instructed officers to treat certain complaints as threats to the department rather than claims requiring investigation. When the attorney asked why he had selected Naomi, Mercer stared at the table for several seconds. "I made assumptions," he said. The attorney waited. "Because she was black?" Mercer closed his eyes briefly. "Yes." The word crossed the courtroom without drama. It did not repair anything. It only removed the last place for the lie to hide. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned. The foreperson read the award slowly: compensation for unlawful detention, damage to reputation, emotional harm, and punitive damages, totaling $5.5 million. The city shared responsibility because supervisors had ignored repeated warnings. Mercer lost his position and pension benefits. Harlan faced separate federal charges for obstruction and evidence tampering. Outside the courtroom, cameras surrounded Naomi, but she did not speak about victory. She spoke about the people whose names had appeared in the buried files. "This case began in a coffee shop," she said, "but it was never only about me." Later, in a quiet hallway, Mercer approached with his attorney. He looked at Naomi, then at Samuel Carter standing beside her. "I am sorry," Mercer said. Naomi held his gaze. "Tell the truth where you told the lie." Months later, Mercer entered a formal cooperation agreement and identified every officer and supervisor involved in altering records. His testimony did not erase his actions, and Naomi never pretended it did. But because he finally stopped protecting the system that had protected him, 12 closed cases were reopened, 4 wrongful convictions were vacated, and families who had been dismissed for years were finally heard. Justice did not arrive as revenge. It arrived as records restored, testimony corrected, doors reopened, and names returned to people who had almost been erased. 1 year later, Harper's Coffee opened beneath a clear autumn sky. The brass bell above the door still gave the same soft chime, and the scent of cinnamon and dark roast still settled into the walls before sunrise. Some things had changed. Linda Harper no longer kept a free tab for officers from the precinct. A small sign beside the register read, "Every customer is treated with dignity here." Miguel Alvarez was now the morning manager, and a framed newspaper photograph near the counter showed him receiving a Community Courage Award for preserving the recording that helped expose the truth. Naomi Carter arrived just after 9 o'clock. She wore a charcoal coat like the one she had worn that morning, but this time her shoulders carried no hidden transmitter and her hands held no sealed evidence. Linda saw her through the window and placed a fresh cup at the table near the glass. The same table. The same chair. A faint mark remained along one wooden leg where it had been damaged during the confrontation. Linda had considered replacing it, but Naomi asked her not to. Some marks should not be hidden. They should remind people what happened when everyone stayed silent, and what changed when a few people decided not to. Samuel Carter joined his daughter a few minutes later. He moved carefully now, but his pressed shirt and polished shoes looked exactly as Naomi remembered from childhood. He sat across from her and studied the room. 2 high school students worked on homework near the wall. An elderly couple shared a blueberry muffin. Officer Emily Rhodes entered in uniform, paid for her coffee, and waited in line like everyone else. She had testified before the city council and helped establish a new independent review process for complaints involving police misconduct. When she noticed Naomi, she offered a quiet nod. Naomi returned it. No speech was needed. Across the street, the precinct windows reflected the morning light. The department had new leadership, new recording policies, and outside oversight. Those changes did not guarantee fairness. Rules never could, not by themselves. But 34 buried complaints had been restored to the public record. 12 cases had been reopened. 4 people had returned home after wrongful convictions were vacated. Families who had once been told their voices did not matter now had official findings that said otherwise. Near the door, a black teenager parked his bicycle and hesitated before entering. A young patrol officer approached from the sidewalk. For a moment, the boy stiffened. Then the officer stepped aside, held the door, and said, "After you." The teenager entered. The officer followed and took his place at the end of the line. Naomi watched without smiling. One courteous gesture could not erase a broken system, but it could reveal the direction someone had chosen. Outside, a man in a plain brown jacket stopped beneath the bookstore awning. Travis Mercer looked older without the uniform. He had completed months of testimony and continued cooperating with investigators. Nothing he did could undo the choices that brought him there. Accountability was not a clean slate. It was the daily burden of telling the truth after years of helping bury it. He looked through the window and saw Naomi. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Travis removed his cap and lowered his head. Naomi gave one small nod. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. Recognition that he had finally done the one thing she demanded. He told the truth where he had told the lie. Travis turned and walked away. Samuel wrapped both hands around his coffee. "You all right?" he asked. Naomi looked at the open door, the morning light on the floor, and the young officer waiting patiently for his turn. "I am," she said. But being right was never enough. People had to be brave enough to prove it. Samuel nodded. The steam from Naomi's cup rose between them and disappeared into the sunlight. Justice had not arrived because Naomi carried a federal badge. It arrived because Linda saved a drive, Miguel preserved a video, Emily corrected the record, Marcus trusted the truth one more time, and ordinary people refused to let fear make their choices. Power had tried to make Naomi smaller. Her restraint exposed it. Her courage outlasted it. Kindness had not made her weak. It had kept her human when anger would have been easier. The bell above the door chimed again, and the room continued with its morning. So what would you have done if you had been sitting inside that coffee shop when everyone else looked away?